Everyone, welcome to the Greg's Garage Pod with co-host Jason Pridmore. My name is Greg White, and sitting alongside me, finally, 40th podcast is Jason Pridmore. Hi, JP.
We've had a good run so far. It's been fun.
We've had a good. This is the first time that you and I actually have done a podcast in the same state.
I know. It's
let
crazy.
alone the same location.
Yeah. Normally we're on the phone for an hour before, and then we're trying to knock one of these things out. But can you think of a better place than this one for our first time doing it here at Laguna Seca? Sun
is shining at WeatherTech Raceway, Laguna Seca. We're in the midst of a World Superbike weekend, MotoAmerica weekend. We have all the classes here from MotoAmerica, and this is a MotoAmerica podcast, and we're going to talk about all the classes coming up in this next, I don't know, what are we going to do, about an hour or so, right?
We always say it's going to be an hour, but we'll see how it goes.
All right. But what we want to do is kick things off with the president of MotoAmerica. Wayne Rainey is here. Wayne, welcome to the Greg's Garage Pod. Good to have you on again.
Thanks, guys. Did I hear 40th? Is that
40th.
What you said?
40th podcast.
Congratulations. Way to go.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We've tried not to miss any, but it's, there's been a couple times.
Well, hold on.
We're 40.
I haven't missed any.
He hasn't missed any.
He missed a few with this leg issue that he had, you know what I mean?
This
little thing with
the poor excuse.
It's a poor excuse.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Now, Wayne, we're lucky enough to have you here on the podcast, so let's go ahead and get right into it. It's the 5th year of MotoAmerica, so tell us, how are things going, I guess is a good question. How are things going with MotoAmerica, and how are you seeing things progress?
Well, as you said, this is our 5th year. This is basically where MotoAmerica came together. So it was actually the last event of the MotoGP. So when we look back over the 5 years, we started with 72 entries the first year, and at this race, I think we have almost 140.
Wow!
So it's really exploding at the moment.
And of course, for this year, Wayne, there's the addition of MotoAmerica Live Plus, which we're on right now, plus Superbike on Fox Sports 2. And what's the word been coming down about how that's been received?
Oh, that's really been amazing with FS2 and the NBC Sports Network with Inside MotoAmerica. It's really opened up to a lot of other manufacturers taking a look at us. I really expect to have one, maybe two new manufacturers on the grid next year besides Yamaha and Suzuki. So getting a lot of people are able to see it overseas, but it's really opened up to the sponsors that haven't been a part of us or part of the series before. So it's really been a positive influx.
My big question, I think, is when you look back at where MotoAmerica's come in the last 5 years, and right now I would say that you're right. It's definitely thriving more. We're seeing more entries. We're getting more people through the gates too. The influence that you had over your career, being 3-time world champion and coming through like you did, when you saw the series kind of going bad for a while there, how long has this been in your sights of thinking about trying to revive something here in America? Because to have somebody like you step in and say, hey, we got to do something, I think is a pretty big thing for our sport. But how long ago did you start to see something like that? It started getting in your mind that you might want to do something like this?
Well, Jason, that's a good question, and it's kind of a long answer, but I'll shorten it up. During MotoGP with Nicky Hayden as the last world champion, it looked like Nicky was going to be the last guy that raced in the series that was competitive. So, we thought we had to do something. And at that time we thought about trying to create a series for young riders. But then when we saw the AMA Championship and it was struggling a bit, there became an opportunity there. So, 5 years ago, I never would have imagined that I would have been where I'm at right now. But seeing that, there's a lot of attention now on American riders, what the series is trying to do, the structure of all the classes. We got some young talent coming up. I truly expect them to be in the World Championships in 3 or 4 years. So, that was the goal when we first started.
Yeah, but Wayne, this really is a long vision, isn't it? It's not like, we're going to do this for 3 or 4 years and then we're going to pop out a MotoGP world champion. This really, MotoAmerica is designed because this takes time, doesn't it?
It does, So the way the class structure is, this shows the young riders can come and race. They can do it with a competitive budget. It's not very expensive. But we race at world-class racetracks in the U.S., and a lot of the top teams get to see the talent that's coming up. So when we see a young talent coming up, everybody in the paddock is going to be able to spot him because you can see his results, what he does on the racetrack. Does he stay aboard the bike? How bad does he want this? And if you want to be world champion, you got to want it all the time, not just on the weekends.
I think too the legitimacy of probably the major guys at Dorna and things like that. Once you got involved, it probably helped get the series a little bit back on the map. what do you hear from overseas, from Dorna and other important principals about trying to get a bloodline now of Americans over to overseas?
Well, Dorna is constantly asking us, if you have somebody that we can spot. I think we're just now at a point, that the series is competitive enough. Our racing is, as you guys well know, every class is competitive all the time. So I think when you have that style of racing, so when our riders do get a chance to go race abroad, they're going to be ready to race because of what we do here. I think what really needs to happen, though, is that the riders that are racing here don't get too comfortable staying in America. You got to make yourself, your face known over there. You got to go visit their paddocks. You got to try to get tests. So you got to talk to the teams, and all it takes is one opportunity, and that one opportunity can change the whole face of that rider's career.
That's awesome, yeah.
I think that I've been lucky enough because I still freak out a little bit when you and I get to talk for as long as we do sometimes. But one of the things that you and I talk about is how much different it is now with these kids than it was when you were coming up and when I was coming up. It really is now. It's a different world that we live in. But I like what you said there about sometimes you got to go old school, pick up the phone yourself and let people know that you're interested. It's not about going through a manager or going through somebody else. Pick up the phone yourself. No,
I was fortunate enough that the championship, 25 years ago, this was the championship everybody went through. Currently, this is what we're trying to revive the championship to get that competitive again. But I think, with young riders and stuff, they have to pick up the phone. They have to be. What's really different, though, is that, like, when I went to Europe, I was 26. But now, you got to be thinking about Europe when you're 14 and 15. So when I was 14 and 15, I sure wasn't thinking, I didn't even know where Europe was.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah. Well, Wayne, last question before we let you go here. For people out there that are watching this that are fans, why would you want them, what is here for them to come see at a MotoAmerica event?
I mean, geez, this is the U.S. Championship. This is what we got. This is where our new talent, our young talent, and our best American riders are at. We need the fans to support it. When you come to our events, there's a lot to do, a lot to see. But most of all, you want to support the American Championship and help the riders. So it's just like going back racing when I was there. I think you're going to see the talent that's coming out of here is going to go on to Europe.
All right, Wayne. Well, thank you so much for spending time with us on the podcast. We appreciate it.
Thanks,
and we look forward to seeing what the show is going to be for the rest of the weekend. I'm excited to see it. So
thanks for the support, guys. Have fun
Wayne.
This weekend.
All right, thanks, Wayne. All right, Jason. Well, we appreciate Wayne coming out. So let's get on with the podcast because we're going to start talking about one of our the premier class, which is going to be the EBC Brakes Superbike class. So what do you think we start?
Well, I think when you start looking at the Superbike class right now, it's what Tony Elias has done, isn't it, this year? I mean, he really has stepped up the last couple of rounds. He had the off round there, and he's come back big at Road America and at Utah. Had some troubles at Road America, obviously crashing in that last corner. Comes back at Utah, maybe a track that you and I talked about, maybe him struggling. Did the double there, so he's coming to Laguna Seca with a lot of momentum. We know how he does when the world shows up here with World Superbike as well.
Yeah. Let's take a look at the points, all right, for EBC
sure.
Brakes Superbike. So we do have Tony Elias on the Yoshimura Suzuki leading the way, 201 points. He's 26 ahead of Cameron Beaubier, who had an absolute ripper of a day today, Jason.
Yes, he did.
Garrett Gerloff also went fast today. He's third in that championship. And then you have Josh Herron at 119, and then JD Beach at 111 points. Now, let's talk a little bit about what we've seen today.
Yeah.
One of the things I think that's interesting so far this year, Jay, is the fact that we seem to be coming to racetracks that seem to favor a Suzuki or favor a Yamaha at this point.
Yes.
And, we've seen Cameron go well here before. We've seen Tony go well before. Were you surprised at how fast Cameron Beaubier went? Because in qualifying practice number 2 today, he went in what, low 24s?
Yeah, 24 flat or 24-1.
Yeah, real close.
And I think that the funny thing about that when you talk about it is the fact that, we look at the main 4 guys a lot of times on the factory bikes, Garrett and Cameron obviously on the Yamaha, Tony Elias and Josh Herron. And on any given weekend, one of them steps up. It's like we saw Garrett at the beginning of the year extremely fast, and Cameron's always quick. Herron led the session to say I think he was the first guy in the 24s at one point. So when you start to look at some of that stuff and you start thinking about what our series has become, it's always the people who are going to step up behind them.
Yeah.
But all year long, it's been one of those 4 guys. It's never been the same guy every weekend.
So we have Tony Elias, who is trying to extend his points lead, but with Cameron Beaubier, we're here at WeatherTech Raceway, Laguna Seca. And you want to put your earpiece back in?
I don't even know where we've gone
it's on your shoulder.
It's
don't
right,
even worry about it.
I got you.
Yeah, but you can hear me okay?
I got you.
Because, by the way, what's going on now is Stock1000 qualifier number 1 is out behind us. We have a paddock show going on. Like, if you're not here at WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca, you are missing out for sure. There's so much great stuff going on. But, you know, looking at this, we have Cameron Beaubier, who goes really good around this racetrack. It seems like they've rolled the Yamaha R1 off the truck. He seems to be going pretty quickly. The bike looks solid.
Yep.
Then from here, though, we start getting to some tracks that really favor him, like
Sonoma.
Sonoma Raceway is another one. So my question for you is, if you're Tony Elias right now with a 26-point lead, are you comfy or are you not comfy?
Not at all. And I think that because we're here, we're at Laguna Seca, Cameron's had a lot of success here, but so has Tony. Tony's done well here, and he'll rebound. Let's keep in mind he was only 8/10 off today, and it was only a second practice or first qualifying for those guys. So I really expect he's going to bounce back. What will Josh Herron do to throw his hat in the mix here as well? I just think it's too early in the championship to do anything. We're one small mistake away from it being a bigger deal, and I think that when you look at what Cameron's done going on to Sonoma, kind of his home round, this is the track where I feel like he's got to step up and get his championship back on track, or it might be a little bit too late. If Tony leads Sonoma with a 25, 30-point lead, it's going to be a lot harder.
Yeah. Speaking of big deals.
Yeah, it's time to talk about me.
Big deal. Big deal, JD Beach.
Yeah, we have to welcome JD Beach to the Greg's Garage Pod with co-host Jason Pridmore set on the Attack Performance Essendon Racing Yamaha. Now, JD Beach, you're a race winner from this year. So before we get into everything that we want to talk with you about, talk to us a little bit about Virginia International Raceway and your first win on a superbike.
Yeah, that race was great. I mean, it's something that it's a goal that I had for a long time, and I mean, it felt great to get it, but now it feels like it was last year. Like it feels so long ago, and I want to get more.
Yeah. So here we are, JD. We're at WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca. It's a combined weekend, World Superbike, MotoAmerica.
It is?
And you decide, like last week, that you're going to do both classes. Tell us about how things have gone today, but first, tell us about your schedule, because it's hectic.
Yeah, so I've gone out on track 4 times, which doesn't sound like a lot, but each time's been almost an hour. And I think I've probably done 60 laps today compared to like a MotoAmerica guy maybe he's done 30. So so I mean it's been a lot of laps, but it's been fun, and I'm definitely learning a lot too, and I'm definitely glad that I did decide to do this. And it was kind of funny because when the whole deal came together with Richard, and he was like, at Laguna, do you want to do World Superbike? And like, this is before we even started racing. And I'm like, I mean, World Superbike yet. Well, let's slow down.
Take one step at a time.
Yeah, and then we go to Virginia, and we talked about it on Thursday. I was like, you know what? If we win this weekend, let's do it.
And then
we won. So.
Well, I think there's some obvious questions I want to ask about this weekend for you, but real quickly, there's not a dirt track or something in Salinas or anything tonight you're going to go do, is there?
I heard there might be one, so
right,
yeah. If I can get out of here, I might.
Yeah. Oh, please.
I think the big talk. I know you went testing last week, and you got to run on the Pirellis a little bit at Button Willow and on the Dunlops. Is it a big transition for you here, or are they just black and round and you kind of get used to them and you roll?
They're definitely different, but they're black and round. I mean, and it's just learning how to ride them a little bit different. And the first MotoAmerica session, the first World Superbike session, we had an issue with the clutch, so we're kind of on our back foot a little bit going into the second group of rounds today. But we've got it all sorted out, and I felt a lot better. So. Tomorrow is going to be really important for me to focus on changing the way I ride between the 2 sessions.
Got it.
All right, so your team, Richard Stamboli and Attack Performance, attempted this last year with Josh Herron. The difference, though, this year is that he actually has 2 complete bikes together. So they have 1 bike set up for World Superbike and 1 bike set up for MotoAmerica. Now, the rules are very similar. So the biggest difference is the rev limiter. So there's a rev limiter on your World Superbike bike that's lower, set lower than your MotoAmerica bike. Do you notice the rev limiter? Have you noticed that you're coming on and having to shift quicker? Or is it something that you're just, okay, you can feel when you need to shift?
Yeah, no, you definitely, because we have the same gearing on both bikes.
Okay.
And so you definitely do feel it rev out quicker. And there's a few spots here like between 3 and 4, and then going into the last turn on the World Superbike, it revs out quick. I mean, it revs quicker, but I mean, it's not a huge deal.
Like bouncing off the limiter kind of a thing for just a second?
Yeah.
Bop. That's my version of it.
Yeah. That's great. Good sound effects. What, JD, I think the big thing for me too is, we talked a little bit about you coming here, World Superbike, weekends off. I mean, when I look at your schedule, we made fun of it just now about the race in Salinas, and there isn't one incidentally, but I don't want to say the word burnout, but the weekends off have to be kind of nice. I know you live for this, you love it, but did you have any kind of extra bit of focus going into this weekend, or did you get any time off kind of coming into this to kind of be fresh, a little bit more fresh coming into it?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't treat it too differently.
Yeah.
I mean, I definitely, when I was training on the motocross bike, I put in longer motos, and then my brakes were real short, and then I'd get right back out.
Yeah.
But the weekend before, last weekend, I was home, and it was a mellow weekend.
Good, yeah.
And then we tested this week, but we didn't really like rush and get stuff done. But no, I mean, like I'm feeling better than I thought I would.
Oh, that's great. Well, he's giving Roger Hayden a new career. Because every time he's out, Roger's racing your bike.
For sure.
I know,
That retirement lasted about, 4 months or something?
Yeah. And Roger's out there on social media, race to race. It's just race to race.
Race to race.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know.
Right.
Does it help that Tommy Hayden's the team manager for Essenson Racing, that he keeps giving his brother a ride?
Yeah, I mean, it probably does help, but I think it's really good to have him on the bike, though, because even though he hasn't raced dirt track in a long time, he's a racer, and he's rode a factory superbike, and so when they need to make changes, and our dirt track bike still has a long way to go, so Roger can feel those little things and say, hey, that was better, that was worse. So I mean, it is good. Has he helped you in
some of that development? Has he reinforced some of the things that you thought needed to be changed on that bike as well, and helped along with some of that?
Yeah, he's agreed with me, and then so stuff gets done.
Yeah.
All right, well, listen, last thing before we let you go. Expectations for this weekend. Rolling in here, obviously tremendous schedule. I mean, we know that in the day that Superbike riders rode 600s and Superbikes, but this is different. When you get to race time, they're back-to-back, and they're 25 laps, then you have to get off the bike, rest, get on another bike, and go 23 laps. So what are your expectations for the weekend?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like if I can get top 10 in World Superbike and then a podium in MotoAmerica, I mean, that would be great. And I mean, I'm feeling good. I think we still need to go a little bit quicker. But really, I think when the weekend's all done, as long as I've given it my all race long, it's racing. Anything can happen, and I mean, I'm definitely looking forward to it. And yeah, so I think top 10 and top 3 would be good.
Are you going to take Monday off? Are you going to take Monday off?
I'm going to have to because I'm flying.
Say you can come golfing. You want to come golf?
I don't know. My arms will work.
Thank you, JD. Good luck this weekend.
Thanks,
all right, man. Appreciate it. All right, Jason. That's.
Yeah, I mean, look, he's got a busy schedule this weekend, and I don't think people realize how taxing this place is, because Laguna is pretty physical, as you know. Going up the hill out of turn 6, the hill's a lot steeper. I went on a track walk yesterday with a couple of my friends that have never been here, and they said, on TV it just doesn't do it justice, and there's a lot of ups and downs. To wrestle a Superbike around now, as much as he's going to, it's a big weekend for him.
All right, Jay, let's transition to Supersport class. Because that's another one of our premier classes here in MotoAmerica, the one that you and I get to commentate on. So when we look at Supersport this weekend, let's take a look at that points championship, because it is nice and snug up top.
Yep.
So when we look at Supersport points, it's Hayden Gillum, 7 points ahead of Bobby Fong. And then we have Richie Escalante,
Yep.
who's in third spot. PJ Jacobsen back there with 103 points, and then Sean Dylan Kelly.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at this weekend, and you know, the last time that we saw Hayden Gillim and Bobby Fong, Hayden won the first race, second in the second race, Bobby second, and then first. So they traded. So they kind of went into Utah, and it was kind of a wash. I mean, I hate to say it, right?
Yeah, nobody really left there with a lot of momentum.
Yeah.
I think if anybody did, Bobby probably did. I think that when we looked on paper, we thought it's going to be Yamaha track. We thought the same thing in Supersport and Superbike.
Yeah.
And Bobby Fong really stepped up. I feel like we saw a jump up in performance from Bobby. You know, within the paddock and things, we've always heard how good he is. Maybe the mental side of things were a little bit rougher. I think he proved something to himself there, that he tailed Hayden for a long time, played his cards right, won that last race. I feel left there with a lot of momentum. Rolled into Laguna today, went quick this morning. But I think the last fourth place guy that you mentioned on that, PJ Jacobsen, somebody that we've maybe expected a little bit more from this year. He was quickest today.
Yeah.
Both our 600 classes had two sessions today. PJ had done some testing in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
So going into the second half of the season, he could be a threat like we thought he might be before now, and he just hasn't been.
What's interesting, though, with PJ, Jason, is that Eugene Laverty is here this weekend racing in World Superbike on the Ducati.
Yeah.
Eugene gave it a go today. He's going to make the decision tonight, from what I understand. If Eugene feels that he can't race this weekend, that PJ is going to step into that seat, and so he may be on a World Superbike and Supersport.
I personally think that's a huge mistake if he does it.
Yeah.
I think at this stage, you're gone through Friday. You've got a good setup on your 600 right now. Your focus has been 600, and I think somebody like PJ, to be getting out there and winning races is what's important right now to get himself back into this championship. I think when you come back from Europe the way he has, he rode World Superbike last year on a D-level team. Now he's on an A-level team with the Celtic team, Barry Gilsonen. He's got some great people under his tent. I would hate to see, even though it's an opportunity to go ride that Ducati, with what we've seen other people be able to do, Greg, on that Ducati this year, other than one person, I think it would be a big job now to kind of jump in on a race day, do a practice session, and then go race the thing. So I think that they'll probably make the right decision. This is purely hypothetical, but I think it would be a mistake if he went and did that now. I think it would have been different had he got the call up today.
Let's talk about two other riders in Supersport. I want to talk about Richie Escalante as I don't know if you would call him a surprise. It's great he's third in the championship, but Richie has definitely shown some things. I know that Richie was at a test at Buttonwillow earlier on this week and impressed a lot of the Superbike riders, the riders and the teams, at his speed on a 600. And also I want to talk about Bryce Prince, because it seems like race 2 at Utah, Bryce Prince all of a sudden arrived to the season, and you and I both really thought that Bryce was going to be, I think, a little bit closer to the front at the beginning of the year. So when you look at Richie Escalante and Bryce Prince, what's the scorecard for them?
You know, I would say at this point, I would give Bryce, I had Bryce as kind of a guy that I thought would be top 3, top 5 every weekend. The problem is the consistency with Bryce. I think that if you went and talked to him right now, that would probably be one thing that he would even bring up. He's an incredibly intelligent guy, knows a lot about bike setup. I sometimes worry about a young guy knowing as much about bikes as he does. He's an incredible bike builder, engine builder, all the way through. And I don't know how much that affects his riding. But here at Laguna, he's woke up on the right side of the bed. He's been up there with the fast guys all weekend. You're right, second race at Utah, he improved. Richie Escalante, I feel, has almost, in a way, working on his consistency a lot more this year. We've seen him throw it down the road in the past. I really rate Richie. I rate both these guys very highly. And I think that this weekend could be another weekend where we see one of the two, or maybe both of them, get up and battle with those other 2 or 3 guys that we kind of consider title contenders.
So Jay, one of the things is we're kind of halfway through the season, right? And I hate to say it, but it's getting to be contract time, meaning this is the time of the year when people are going to start thinking about what's going on in 2020. So if you look through the Supersport list of riders, who do you think right now has got to step up if they're going to continue racing in MotoAmerica in Supersport?
Wow. You know, that's a hard question. When you look at that, Greg, I think that all the guys that we've talked about have pretty solid teams. Bryce has Tuned behind him. Obviously, Escalante's got his team behind him. I mean, the guy that we haven't really mentioned yet that I've been most impressed with, who I didn't even know at the beginning of the year, is Sean Dylan Kelly.
Ugh.
I think that kid's done an amazing job this year. For 17 years old, just turned 17. The amount of maturity that he's shown both off the track as well as on it has been nothing short of incredible. I expect him to win some races maybe in the second half. He's going to all these tracks cold. Never seen him before.
That's true.
And I think that it's a testimony to the team. as the knowledge that they have. But Sean Dillon Kelly has been really, really impressive. And when you hear, when you get Wayne Rainey sitting next to us and we're talking about young kids, this is a kid that we could see in this paddock, World Superbike, in the next year, 2, 3 maybe, if he gets on with the right deal. I think we haven't talked about Josh Hayes either.
Oh yeah, Josh Hayes.
And having Josh in the paddock, and in that, he's been helping Bobby, he's been helping Richie. There's some influence there, and I think that when you look at that stuff, who would I like to see step up? I don't know. I think everybody's pretty solidified with their seats and where they're at right now. I don't think if you went to any of the teams that these guys ride for, that they'd be willing to get rid of anybody. There's not been anybody that's really stepped up behind them too much yet.
For me, the one name that stands out that I would love to see get some better results at the second half of the season has got to be Nick McFadden.
No question. Great call.
I think
he's fast here today.
He's fast here today. And I just think it's time for Nick. He's in a great environment back in Owensboro, Kentucky. He's got good training partners, and I just think there's something that needs to click. We've been waiting for it for a while. He was so close there on that Suzuki. Now he's on the Yamaha. I thought he was going to be on a better bike, in terms of just would fit his riding style a little bit better. But obviously it turned out that the M4 X-Star Suzukis are absolute rippers.
They made a big jump this year.
So I think I'd like to see Nick just make that step. So hopefully we'll get to see it. This weekend's unique here at WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca because for the Supersport class, they only get one opportunity to race this weekend, where in the EBC Brakes Superbike class, they get 2 chances at it.
Greg, when you look at it, just with the riders that we just talked about, when you look at the MotoAmerica 600 Supersport Series as a whole right now, it is, without question, the whole field has stepped up.
Yeah.
It's not just 1 or 2 or 3 guys that are leading the way. As a lap time and as a race distance goes, the whole field has jumped forward. So you're seeing guys like Jarrett Nassani, guys that have finished further back in the past, Lucas Silva, who I think doesn't get enough credit. He's done amazing on a Suzuki as well. You got Jason Aguilar, who we haven't talked about. There's a group of individuals that have made the sport, or made the series itself, move forward.
The other thing to think about, too, with Supersport is the fact that we had 2 classes, didn't we? We had 600 Supersport class, then we had the Supersport class. And what MotoAmerica did last year was kind of combine the technical specs of the 2. So you saw Supersport lose a little bit of their adjustability, say, but you saw the 600 Supersport
stock riders.
stock 600 stock move up. So when we look at lap times, we take that into consideration. So you can't say that, going back a couple of years, well, this is the outright lap time of Supersport because they didn't match up. But riders are close to what J.D. Beach was able to accomplish last year when he won the championship, and you see that, these lap times really starting to decrease and more people getting closer to the front.
Yeah, so. And to your point, at the beginning of the year, I mean, you and I chat all the time. It was like, well, who's going to win it? Is it going to be Hayden or P.J. Jacobsen? And it never turns out that way because with racing, you still got to run the laps. And all these other kids have really impressed me this year with how they've stepped up. All these teams have stepped up. I think what M4 Suzuki has done this year with making the GSXR even better than it was is a testimony to the team and how much hard work they put into things. So the 600 class has been really interesting. The other thing, too, is all of them have made mistakes. All of them have made and had those throwaway weekends, every single one of them. With the exception of Richie Escalante, he's done a very good job of staying consistent, keeping his nose clean, doing a good job, and it's only a matter of time before he gets to maybe get up on the podium more or even win a race.
You gonna pick a race winner?
This weekend, am I gonna pick a race winner? No, I'm not going to pick a race winner. I'm going to say P.J. Jacobsen might do it. I talked to their team a little bit earlier on. They went and did some testing. They found a few things that were changes that they made internally to some things for P.J. that made some big differences. They thought outside the box a little bit, which is great. And for him coming here, I think he's got a point to prove. He was fast this morning, but I believe we're going to get 4 or 5 guys up at the front.
I agree with you.
Yep.
I think it's going to be 4 or 5 riders that are going to mix it up here.
Yep.
And this track can really create super tight racing.
Yes.
And occasionally it can create a checkout. And I don't think anybody in the Supersport class has got the extra speed. It was so close. I mean, Josh Hayes was third, I think, or fourth,
yeah.
And he was only 2/10.
And there's one other element to this that you brought up. We do one race this weekend. The 600 Supersport riders are done for today, and they're done all day tomorrow.
That's true.
There's nobody's going to be able to improve from night to day. So 600 Supersport riders are done. They have a qualifying Sunday morning, and then they sit around all day, Greg. They sit around all day. They're the last race of the day. So how will fatigue set in? How will being motivated? All those kind of things. When you're the last race of the day after all the main classes go, sometimes it can be mentally fatiguing to get yourself mentally ready for that last race of the day. I think will be a key for some of these riders.
Twins Cup going out on track now for their qualifiers. So Jay, I think we'll wrap up Supersport. Why don't we move on to the LuqiMoly Junior Cup class? You want to do that?
Yeah, I'd love it.
Because that's been a very interesting class. Let's take a look at the points for this one. Rocco Landers leads 21 over Dallas Daniels. Kevin Olmedo has got 97. You have Gage Reese and Dominic Doyle, your top 5. What's been very interesting, I think, is the Rocco Landers effect, where Rocco started off this season strong. 3 race wins. No one thought he could really touch him. And then the VIR race 2, it was kind of a weird one. And then he came back and won a few. But it was the last race where we saw Dallas Daniels finally come out of his shell.
Yeah, well, there's no question. I think that when we started the series, this is the class that we always look at as being like the fast class, up-and-coming class of fast riders. What Rocco went and did in Atlanta and just kind of was the class of the field there. But when we went to VIR, we had a little weather race, like you said. From that point on, there's been one guy to me that was really taking it to the guy that needed to step up. Dallas Daniels did that finally in Utah, and he's a kid that we've been talking about quite a bit as who's going to be the guy that's going to step up against Rocco. We've seen Kevin Olmedo do it. We've seen Dominic Doyle and a couple of these other kids kind of show forth. But I think that every time we'd see a rostrum interview with Dallas, as nice as it is to be on the podium, you could see that little bit of disappointment. And I kept on saying it's a matter of time, and it finally happened in Utah for him.
Every time I saw Dallas Daniels on the podium when he didn't win, I was reminded of that joke. Horse walks into a bar. Bartender says, "Hey, why the long face?" Ha ha. Let's welcome to the Greg's Garage Pod with co-host Jason Pridmore, Illinois' own Dallas Daniels. Hi, Dallas.
How you doing, dude?
Good. How are you guys?
Good. Thanks for coming on the set, man.
Yeah,
congratulations on your win. Last time we were on track for the LuqiMoly Junior Cup, you had a nice win. Go ahead and talk us through that one. How did it go for you that day when we were in Utah?
There's a pretty big up and down set of events, obviously, with the red flag and stuff like that. So it was kind of nerve-wracking. And while the red flag was going on, Josh Herron actually came out to me and said, "You just got to beat him. You just got to move him out of the way and do it. You know, there's no set thing you got to do. You guys are the same speed." So after the restart, he kept kind of looking back during the race, and I think that kind of showed him that I had the speed, and he was kind of getting nervous. But I just tried to run smooth, consistent laps, and I thought I needed the lead, and I thought the run to the start-finish line wasn't long enough for him to draft me, so I just tried to cut the last 2 corners I could, and luckily we came out with a win, and it was just by a little bit, but it was good.
Yeah, right. You know you scared me there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you probably heard it, right?
I thought I was there, but after watching it, I was way
What are you talking about? They're watching it right now on this spot. Tell us about it, though.
Yeah, when I came up to the line, I thought I was crossed it already, but after watching the video, and Dale told me I was a little
I bet Dale told you. I said, Dale's going to have a little talk with Dallas, I'm sure. You know, for a young rider, and you come into the series, and, you know, I met you a couple of years ago, and I think that what a lot of people don't know about you is how charismatic you are. When you're very friendly, very mature for your age, a lot of dirt track experience, but coming into road racing, being as close as you were, what changed as far as, was it bike setup? Was it a mental attitude coming into that race at Utah? Was it frustration? What's the biggest thing that you kind of felt got you to persistently to be right where you were in order to give yourself a shot?
It was just, you know, every single round from Atlanta from the beginning of the season, there was so much energy built up that we've been so close so many times. Pretty much from VIR on, every single race, I was less than tenths away from a win. So, I mean, it was just all this building up inside that was going on that I just needed to do it. It wasn't, you know, bike setup or a mental thing. It was just, it had to happen. And I kind of had some confidence with sitting on pole after the weekend and race 1 being close, coming from a gap back and being right on him at the start-finish line. So I'd say a lot of it was confidence from the weekend, just from practice and race 1.
And just to remind the listeners, Dallas, I mean, I hate to do this to you, but we have to. So before race 2 at Utah, in 7 races, you'd finished second to him, Rocco Landers, the championship points leader, 5 times in 7 races. So it must have been frustrating. But let's backtrack a little bit. For those out there that are listening to this or watching this right now, and they don't know you, tell us a little bit about your background. How old are you? Where are you from? How did you get into racing motorcycles? Just a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm 15 years old, and I'm from Mattoon, Illinois, which is central Illinois, just a small town. And I grew up actually flat track racing. I had never done any road racing or anything like that. When I was about 12 or 13, I did the Pro Supermoto Series, which you actually announced on TV.
Yeah.
But so other than that, I mean, I did a few track days because my dad had road raced and he wanted me to get into it and just have some fun with it. But when Nicky Hayden passed away, my dad and Earl are very good friends, and my dad had worked with the Haydens when they were little kids. And Earl wanted me to do a wild card ride with the KTM Cup when they were in 2017, when they were all on the same bike. So I went to Pittsburgh and did a wild card round with Quarterly Racing and Dale. And Dale liked me and liked what I did and how I acted at the races. So we got a call that winter, and he wanted me to ride the Ninja 400 for the 2018 season, which is kind of crazy because if you look at our team for 2018, it was me, a dirt track kid who had never been really seen road racing, and Jamie Osadillo, who was a motocrosser.
Yeah, well.
So, I mean, one of the best teams with two really newbies, you know? So that was kind of cool, and, you know, I got a podium, and she got a podium there at the beginning, and we really progressed. But I actually ended up getting hurt and breaking both my wrists. So from that, I was just trying to come back to the end of the year. And over the winter, we did a lot of testing, a lot of mental things, and working on the bike, and we came into this year very, very prepared. And obviously, you know, with 2 podiums at Atlanta, and I've only been off the podium once from that. So to come off last year, my best finish being 3rd, and this year win a race and be 2nd, 3rd, 4th. My worst finish is 4th, I believe, and it's been very good. I'm very fortunate to have this opportunity.
Now, you run the number 69, and we see a lot of 69s on the bike. So tell us a little bit more about that and how that ties into what you were referring to earlier with the Haydens.
Well, when the Haydens were kids and younger, growing up dirt track racing, my father worked for them, like I said, being their mechanic and rider coach, and they would come stay at his house and stuff. And Earl stayed close to my dad, and they always called. You know, Nicky and Roger and Tommy were always, Nicky was MotoGP racing, Roger was factory Cowie, Tommy was factory Suzuki, you know, as you guys know. But we always stayed very close, and when Nicky passed, like I said, I got that road race deal with Earl that kind of helped set up stuff. But when he passed on, I thought it'd be kind of cool. When we went to the funeral, I asked Earl, what would you think if I ran 69 for the rest of my dirt track career? And he said, oh, that'd be awesome. I love that. It's a great idea. And so when I came to road racing, we had to run 3 digits in the RC Cup, and I was 696, I think. But then for 2018, I just picked 69, and it's kind of cool because it's just my way to honor Nick. He was my childhood hero growing up, and just the way to honor the Haydens for Earl doing all the help that he's done for me these past few years and all the stuff like that.
Now, you have something underneath your arm right there, so why don't you tell us? Well, yeah, Jay, why don't you help him with the microphone maybe? And so this is a bit of an exclusive from what I understand, Dallas. Oh, I know that helmet.
I know that helmet.
Well, this is Nicky's replica from 2005 Laguna Seca when he won his first MotoGP race.
Yep.
And I was supposed to wear it, but they didn't have my size, so I'll have it for Sonoma. But I thought the story behind this helmet's pretty cool because coming to Laguna, it was probably his favorite track, his first win. I mean, he had the replica helmet there, and it's cool because it all ties together with things. And even my crew chief Dale, when he won his Superbike race in 1993, when they span the camera out at the podium, Nicky's standing there with kind of the awe look on his face like we all did when Nicky won his World Championship. So it's kind of crazy how it doesn't just tie in with me and my family. It ties in with the Quarterly Racing team and you know, everybody that I'm involved with now.
I'm going to age myself because I was there for both of them. I saw Dale win at Mid-Ohio.
Yeah. I
was a Supersport kid that was like, I knew what Dale was, and as a privateer, I had so much respect for what he was trying to do, so I watched him win. And then, of course, I was Nicky's first real teammate other than his brothers, so
that is true.
He influenced my life a lot.
Yeah.
And I think when you walk around Laguna Seca this weekend, there's more Nicky flags flying than anything else. He's so well respected. I think it's neat that you always are going to be able to honor him like that. And in Sonoma, it's going to be cool seeing you wear the helmet.
And Dallas, is it true that this helmet is coming back out? Is that?
Yes, it's coming back out. I'm not sure when it'll be open to the public, but I believe I'll be the only person wearing it at Sonoma. But yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah,
it's
I think ARAI is gonna, like, they're relaunching that helmet
Yeah,
basically, and you're
it's
gonna be
pretty
able
cool.
to buy that replica helmet soon.
Well, I want to know real quick, how did practice go today? How did things go?
Free practice, we were 6th fastest, kind of struggling with some bike setup stuff, and myself coming back to this track, it's obviously very tricky, very technical. So I was struggling with some riding stuff, and in qualifying, we ended up 5th.
Yep.
Pretty close, pretty close to top 3, where, I mean, I was kind of disappointed, but the second row I think will be all right from there. And we still have some changes we want to make to the bike. So we've been kind of struggling all day with bike setup and myself and just stuff like that, trying things. We have limited time here, as you know.
Of course,
only
yeah.
one race. So
When you roll into a World Superbike weekend and now you're a part of it, I mean, I know that we did this last year, but you were hurt.
Yeah.
I think you were hurt last year. For
no,
this
I
race.
was
Were you
here
at
for
one?
this. I got my first podium here, but I was hurt for Sonoma.
Okay, yeah. So, but does it put any pressure on you, knowing that, like, we got some heavy hitters in the paddock over there that are looking for young guys?
Yeah, it puts a little bit of pressure, but I try not to worry about that.
Good
but,
man. Yeah, it's good. I like
Hey,
that.
when we look
Good.
at a LuqiMoly Junior Cup bike, when we talk about setup, obviously it's not as sophisticated as a Superbike and all the adjustability. So when you're talking about setup, what can you do to that motorcycle to make it more comfortable for you to race?
Well, like you said, with the Junior Cup bike, it's not, you don't have to make such as direct changes as like a 1000, you'd say, or something like that. It doesn't move around as much. So usually what our main changes are is suspension changes, shock and forks, or gearing changes. We usually don't mess with a lot of that, maybe ride height or, stuff like that, but we're never making some kind of electronic change or something. It's usually just mechanical stuff.
So let's talk about your relationship with Rocco Landers. Do you even have one? Are you guys enemies? Are you frenemies? Are you guys tight? Like, what's the situation there, as you guys are only 7 points apart here at the halfway point of the season?
Well, I met him at Atlanta. I never knew who he was, and after, I really didn't know he would be a big heavy hitter. I'd never heard of him or anything. So after Atlanta, I did some research on him and seen where he'd come from and what he's been doing. So yeah, I mean, we're friends. I talk to him, but we're not close. We don't really have time to hang out or anything. So, I mean, we don't hate each other by any means, but yeah, we're friends.
All those second places that we talked about, okay?
What are you looking at me for, man?
No, he talked about them. I didn't talk. You talked about
that's
them.
my
I didn't
bad.
talk
That's
about
my bad. I'll
No,
give you that.
but now that you're 7 points back, it's not such a big deal, especially after we've got that first win. Moving into the second half of the season, I think the consistency that you showed, that's something that you got to keep on and keep the pressure on as well.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we've been very close, so I know he's feeling some kind of pressure, and then to finally get that one, I would think he would be feeling pressure, seeing that he's beatable and that we beat him straight up finally.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it's hard for me to be disappointed with second after what I've came from last year and stuff, but I've never been so mad to stand on the podium in second place. It's been eating away at me.
I've noticed.
Thank you for finally being honest about it, because those post races, I know
can
you were
see it too.
you were polished.
I mean, it was disappointing for the team and for myself and stuff like that. But when we did it together, and we all put a good effort in, and it was good.
Dallas, if you could script next season, where would you be racing next year? Where do you want to be?
I would like to be in the AFT paddock with Pro Flat Track, and I would also like to be here, kind of doing what I'm doing this year.
Okay.
Going for both championships.
Any aspirations of going off to Europe and possibly, because, we talk about it with Wayne Rainey earlier on, and he was talking about the youth, 14, 15, 16 years old is kind of what they're looking for to go to Europe. Is that something you might be interested in?
If I were to get an offer or a deal with it, yes, I would possibly look at it, but my whole life, like I said, grew up dirt track racing, so it's going to take a little bit to drive me away from that, I think.
Yeah, I used to tell Nicky all the time, and he got so good at road racing, I'm like, Nick, you got to get away from the dirt track. It's killing me, because it's so close, and it's a passion thing, and once it gets in your blood, you guys love it.
Yeah.
But now, if there's money to be made in both, and you can make a living riding a motorcycle,
and if there's money to be made overseas, you got to do it.
You got to
do it. You got to do it.
Yeah,
well, listen, good luck this weekend and the rest of the season. Thanks so much for joining us on the podcast.
Thanks for having me, guys.
All right, Dallas Daniels, thanks, man, and thanks for introducing that helmet. All right, Jason, there you go. That kid could be future star of this. Well, he's kind of a star now, but I'm talking maybe Superbikes. He's got a good size for a Superbike, doesn't he?
Yeah, he's getting a little bit big for the Junior Cup.
Yeah.
I think, Greg, too, I didn't get into it too much, but the funny thing about Dallas is you and I, a few years ago, we weren't calling the LuqiMoly class. So basically Greg and I were doing Superbike 600. We weren't really doing the LuqiMoly. But what was funny is that as we started to do it, the personalities of these kids, they wanted to come meet, who are the two guys announcing, right? So but Dallas, even prior to that, I would literally be walking down the center of the pits, and he would come out of his tent to come say hi to me or introduce himself or reintroduce himself even though I remember them the first time. Very mature young man. And I think we didn't get into it, but I watched the Peoria TT this year. He won his first big national there, and then I think he's now been promoted up to AFT, and he made the first main event a couple weeks ago in Springfield, I believe is where it was.
Yeah, so he's starting to live his dream. Yeah. He's starting to live his dream, and that's really what's great to see. And getting that first race win under his belt, it's really going to be interesting to see two things, I think. One, how Rocco Landers responds to losing that race heads up. I don't think it's going to bother him much.
I ain't going to bother Rocco, yeah.
But also, if this is that extra little thing that Dallas needs, obviously he hasn't gotten it perfect yet here at WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca, but I was talking with John Kaczynski, he's here, and we were talking about this particular racetrack, and you and I have talked about it before, and I think you would agree with me. When we go to different racetracks that riders have never been to, especially at the world level, we never really say that there's a home field advantage.
Yeah, home track advantage, yeah.
But this racetrack is probably the exception. There are little intricacies here that, and you could see it the first year Nicky Hayden won his first MotoGP
100%.
race, that the next year he won again, but they were a lot closer to him. And I think that this is one of those tracks where if you can get it figured out and learn how to go fast around here, that you think it does translate to the rest of the tracks?
I definitely think it can translate. I think that when you look at the hardest tracks that are on our schedule, I think they're still ahead of us. Sonoma and Pittsburgh are two difficult tracks, I feel, to learn. A lot of elevation, kind of a lot of blind corners and things like that. I think Sonoma, without question, is what Nicky did here in 05 by coming here and dominating the way he did. I think he kind of caught everybody off guard a little bit, backed it up in 06. The thing I remember about this place more than anything is World Supersport came here one year, and I think first session out there was 28 crashes because Laguna has got those idiosyncrasies that you talk about. So if there is anywhere in the world, it might be here that you might see some of that. But nowadays, with electronics and the bikes being a little easier to ride and things, it helps guys get through some of that a little bit easier, I believe.
All right, that's LuqiMoly Junior Cup. Any predictions in Junior Cup for this weekend, Guy?
Well, we talked about Rocco, and we haven't really talked about him in this little segment that much, but what this kid has done is nothing short of amazing. You heard Dallas say Dallas has been around in the road race paddock for a year or two. Rocco had never been to a MotoAmerica, as a racer until Atlanta.
Well, he was like 14 years old in a month or something.
In a month, so he's very young. I think that when you look at what he's done, the head on this kid's shoulders is incredible as well. I've had some great talks with his father and what they went through over in Europe to get back over here and so on and so forth. To put the string of wins together that he did, incredible. He's still the title favorite. I mean, even though Dallas has been sitting here, you got to look at Rocco and think Dallas is still going to have to continue to put that pressure on, make Rocco make some mistakes. We'll see who else can step up and get between them. But Rocco was quickest here again today right out of the box. So I think he's going to still be the guy that's going to be hard to beat.
All right, that's LuqiMoly Junior Cup. So we have two more classes to talk about here in this MotoAmerica podcast. Let's talk Stock 1000, Jason, because in the Stock 1000 class, we have the defending champion, Andrew Lee, leads the way by 2 points over Stefano Mesa. Michael Gilbert, 32 points back. We have Travis Wyman and Jeff May. Jeff May, of course, started this season late. He didn't show up till round number 3, where he won. Then a DNF, then a second place for Jeff May. And I know that he was fast in the first session this morning. And we didn't see how qualifying just went. I don't know if you picked up your phone.
I didn't pick it up,
But, so Andrew Lee and Stefano Mesa. Kawasaki obviously has been the dominant bike in Stock 1000 this season. So let's talk about it, Jay. What are you seeing in Stock 1000? What do you think of the job that Andrew Lee's doing to defend?
Well, I think there's a couple issues that when you look at Stock 1000 that we have to take into consideration. Last year, MotoAmerica introduced this class, even though we used to run them with the Superbikes. The Stock 1000 bikes are a lot different than they were when Josh Herron and Matthew Schultz and some of them were racing, Jake Lewis. Those guys were on 1000 Superstocks mixed in with the Superbikes, but the class was much different, the structure, the rules. And last year we had Travis Wyman and Andrew Lee, who really only did all the races. And we had some local guys sprinkled in and this and that. It was really a 2-horse championship. We had a couple of guys at the end of the year jump up and did like 4, 5, 6 rounds. But overall, it was those two guys. When we looked at the entry list going into this year, we saw a lot more people. We saw Michael Gilbert is going to come in with Travis Wyman and so on. Stefano Mesa, who we saw at some of the races last year, but running with Wira during the 1,000 races that we used to see. Seeing Stefano in the paddock, I think is amazing. This kid's so underrated. He's down there in South Florida. We don't get to talk about him. I'm really happy to see him make the jump up to MotoAmerica. He comes out of the box at in Atlanta, puts it on the podium right away. I think with the addition of Jeff May, a veteran, what it's done is it's made all these other kids hungry and made them realize that just because there was only 2 of us last year, Travis and Andrew, they want to go out and prove now that we've got all this new blood in the system and we've got a really savvy track veteran there who's capable of winning races. They want to prove themselves again that they can go out and win these races themselves.
And what about the validity of this Stock 1000 class, Jay? Meaning, like, when you look at it, some of the people that I talk to in this paddock are looking at the Stock 1000 class to say, are these people ready to move into the Superbike class? What do you think?
Well, I think that when Wayne and Chuck were looking at this class, Chuck Asklin, I think that they were looking at it at an entry level, getting guys on thousands. We have a lot of kids in the paddock that are pretty big guys. There's a couple guys that I can think of right now. I just worked with a young man named Jeremy Coffey from the Pacific Northwest. He's a big kid. A 600 Supersport bike isn't really going to be the way for him to go.
Yeah.
He's currently running in our Superbike class. Maybe moving on, this might be a class for him to look at, 1000 Superstock. He doesn't have to feel like he's giving up so much on a 600 to some of the smaller guys like a PJ Jacobson. I love it because what it also does is as our paddock continues to grow, and if it does, especially next year, you heard Wayne talking about a couple manufacturers interested in coming back in. It gives these kids like Andrew Lee, Michael Gilbert, Stefano Mesa, Travis Wyman,
Corey Alexander.
Corey Alexander, when he comes back around on the East Coast rounds.
Yeah.
When you look at that, it's going to give these manufacturers a look at some of these kids and how they ride thousands already. So that being said, I love the fact that we have this 1000 Superstock class. I think we've seen more entries this weekend than we've seen ever before.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to just continue to grow, and it gives the paddock other options.
Now, when you look at Stock 1000, are you one to look at the lap times compared to a Superbike, or are the Stock 1000s far enough of a departure away from a Superbike where you're not really going to look at it?
It's a very legit question, and it's Superbikes are just a little bit different. I wouldn't say that they're night and day different like when you and I were growing up, how much the Superbikes were then compared to how they are now. I think that one of the biggest things that we see now is we try to get the racing cost effective to where these manufacturers can come in, controlled electronics, some of that other stuff that it's going to make it more affordable for teams to be able to come and get into Superbike. Ultimately, we want our Superbike class to grow. But I think that we can breed a lot of young riders on these thousands and give them a place to where they'll be able to jump on a Superbike that's not that much different, but it still is pretty much different. Every weekend I talk to these kids, and it doesn't matter when they leave, they always wish they went a little second quicker to the Superbikes. And
welcome to my race career.
Yeah, welcome to our race career, I guess you could say probably. But yeah, you're exactly right. I think that everybody stepped up, and when you look at this class now, Andrew's got a lot of momentum behind him. He's very confident. I've been lucky enough to do some work with him, and the maturity that he has shown me in the last year, it's like he's literally grown 5 years right in front of my eyes. He approaches his race weekends differently. He looks at his track times and his segments and his sessions differently, much more of a planner. Very intelligent guy. He's going to be hard to beat this year.
Now, MotoAmerica had given Stock 1000 an opportunity to race in the EBC Brakes Superbike race number 2.
Yep.
Nobody took him up on that offer, but primarily from what I found out was because of the tank volume, the amount of fuel they can hold to go the Superbike race distance. Is that something that you're hearing from people as well?
I am, and I think that there was a number of kids I think that were very interested. A lot of our trucks, our team trucks, they're out on the West Coast now. So the Travis Wymans, who we've already seen at COTA do a wild card. I think that looking back, originally we were supposed to have a standalone weekend.
Yeah,
MotoAmerica was.
That's right, yeah.
So MotoAmerica had put it out to all the classes that we are going to be racing at Laguna Seca. So the Twins Cup and 1000 Superstock are obviously lumped into that. Now it's made our weekend really busy because with World Superbike coming, they have 2 races plus a sprint race now, an extra race. So it's made the schedule very tight. Looking back on it, in order to get those 1000 Superstock kids into Superbike this weekend, I think that we would have had to eliminate 1000 Superstock, put the Michael Gilberts and Andrew Lees and Travis Wymans, Mesas, all these guys. Then they could have maybe done a little testing and then come and done a wild card here.
Yeah, I know for me, I always keep an eye on the Stock 1000 because I want those lap times to kind of close up, you know what I mean, and be only a couple seconds off of what a superbike is, just because they're on the same track, they're in the same conditions, and but you've ridden a Stock 1000 bike, didn't you? You didn't at Road America, like on Monday. So how much different do you feel that bike is from a proper superbike that you've ridden in the past?
You know, Greg, I haven't got a chance to really jump on a good superbike in the last, say, 5 or 6 years. There's definitely a difference. The Superstock bikes are so good now.
I know.
And I think that when you look at it, even talking to some of the top Superstock riders, the big thing that I talk to them about is they're going to be pushing just as hard on a Superstock bike to maybe only finish 10th, 9th, 12th as they would be to try to win. And when you're trying to prolong a career, you want to test yourself against some of these guys. But Andrew races against Jason Uribe. Let's look at that as an example. Jason's bike is a little bit more of a super bike than Andrew Lee's Superstock 1000. Jason's going extremely fast here right now in our AFM series. And he pretty much, he beat Andrew pretty handily, and he beat Valentine DeBees at the last round at Thunder Hill, who was also on a Graves Superstock Spec 1000. So when you start to think about, do you want those kids out there really pushing it at 10 tenths to maybe only finish 10th and 11th? I think that's a legitimate question. Going through equipment, risking your body, all those kind of things. Because there's a big enough difference to where I feel like if you put an Andrew Lee or any of those kids we've talked about on a proper superbike, they're going to be up their order quite a bit more.
I have a feeling in the Stock 1000 race this weekend that it's going to be a close race, probably between maybe 4 riders up there, maybe 5.
I would say so. Yeah, I would say so. I think Travis Wyman's bike looked better than it had all year to me at Utah, and unfortunately he didn't get the bike off the line very well. They had some problems with launch control, I believe, and so he went back in 12th, and it was an extremely difficult track to pass on. He worked himself up to 4th, but by that time the podium was a little bit out of order for him. I don't know how many laps Stefano Mesa's done around here. I was looking at his times this morning, and I thought, if he's never actually been here, because I don't remember him being here before, but if he's never been here, he was going really fast to start. So there's stories behind all of these guys, but I agree with you. I think that we could see 4 or 5. I think Jeff May's going to be hard. He's got a lot of time around Laguna Seca on proper superbikes. Their session this morning, Greg, was in the fog. And
it was really foggy.
When you and I started this right now, we didn't get a chance to see what the lap times were. So right now it could be somebody that we haven't even talked about leading, and we don't know. So we'll see.
All right. Let's move on to Twins, because Twins is, I don't know, would you have to say the most fun class, I guess you could say? Because they're twins. You can race old ones. You can race new ones. I heard today that you could race 2-strokes if you wanted to, so bring out an old TZ. I don't know.
Come on, tell me what you heard.
Well, I was talking to John Kaczynski. John Kaczynski, and he kind of, John being, the rider, world champ that he is, and obviously amazing rider even at his advanced age, which is just a year older than us, by the way. Can you imagine?
I saw him walking around. Looked great.
I know. Yep. He was talking about, hey, wait a second. I think I can build a TZ 250 and come to Twins Cup and be competitive. And I was like, oh boy, here we go. And John's like, can you imagine coming onto the front straightaway here at Laguna and you hear whoop, 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 and then all of a sudden you hear and I'm like, oh yeah.
Stinging their way down the front straightaway. Yep.
In the Twins Cup class, it's Michael Barnes leading the way, 11 points over Drake Beecham, Curtis Murray, and our defending champ, Chris Parrish, 69 points, so he's 17 back. And then Alex Dumas is 20 back, Jay. So far this morning, Alex Dumas seems to be, who's our Junior Cup champion from last year, seems to be finding his way on the Twin, on the SV 650. But I know you keep a real close eye on that class, as do I.
Yep.
And it's a tale of, I think, older riders and younger riders as well. So
I think that when you look at MotoAmerica again as a whole, 1000 Superstock kind of became kind of a little bit of a surprise class because there were some people that moved around. I think it's the same thing in the Twins. I think when you look at it last year, we looked at Twins Cup, and I'm saying this straight out, I looked at it like it was a bunch of guys working on bikes in their garages. They're showing up, and it's giving them a chance to come race at a national.
Yep.
And I think that's I don't think that's unfair of me to say. When you look at Chris Parrish or the guys that were running Jason Madamas and things like that last year, they weren't household names to us. They weren't guys that you get to talk about a lot, but I've heard about them at club races and so on. And what I think's happened this year is those guys have also said, hey, we got Alex Dumas, we got
Drake Beecham,
yep. Michael Barnes come back. Yeah. There's some legitimacy in this class now. And what it did is it made all those guys kind of think to themselves, hey, we're stepping up our programs and we're going to do what we need to do. Chris Turner's another guy that a guy who was with Red Bull rookies with Jake Gagne and things back in the day. I think that now MotoAmerica kind of like created this class because everybody was talking about twins, but they're allowing these LuqiMoly Junior Cup kids. It has given them a step. You got to remember, a lot of these kids. Here's a 15-year-old kid sitting next to us,
right,
who has a year of road racing experience under his belt. If he was to go out and win the championship this year, to get a 600 would be, not only would it be hard, but the learning curve on that would be very difficult. Okay, so what would prevent him from jumping on the bike that Michael Barnes, his teammate, has and going and racing in the Twins Cup next year? It's given these Twins Cup kids an avenue. And I don't know if MotoAmerica, when they built this class, that was what their thought was. And I think it's been great.
Now, I think you're right. And what's interesting, I think, is the ingenuity, innovation of the paddock. The paddock said, okay, we have an Alex Dumas, perfect example, right? We have a young kid who was 15 when he won the championship. He was 15 when he wins a championship. He basically rode himself out of the LuqiMoly Junior Cup class. He couldn't be there anymore because he had a top 5 finish the year before. He wins a championship, so he's out. So instead of putting him on a 600 and having him have the possibility of floundering around for an entire season while he's trying to figure it out during race weekends, the paddock looked around and said, wait a second, we have a class that we could actually get him on a 650 twin, so it's a step up. It's not quite, as sophisticated or as fast as a Supersport bike. And I think that really shows you where MotoAmerica said, look, here are the classes, paddock. Now go do something with them. Let's see what you can do with them. And I agree with you. I think last year we looked at twins and we're like, really, twins? And it became a bit of, even now, if you are interested in looking at really cool motorcycles that have a lot of, garage grit, I guess you could say to them. It's fun to kind of walk around this whole paddock and take a look at and see the different fairings that are on there and the different things that they're doing within the rules. But the greatest thing about twins to me is the actual racing itself.
It's gotten close, and I think that when you look at exactly what you said, Chris Parrish is a great example, our defending champion. He has showed up this year, and I've said it on our podcast many times. His effort looks so great, so professional, so polished. Yeah, he's got a Sprinter van, he's got a trailer, but it looks polished. It looks like it belongs. You see Michael Barnes on the Ducati. But I think that the thing that we laugh about, and is it any shock to you that the Ulrich family sat there and scratched their head and went, wait a minute, there's an opportunity here?
No shock to me.
And what they did is they got Alex Dumas, and they realized that to put him on a 600 at a very young age, 16, the opportunity that they've given this young man is amazing. Let's put him on a Twins Cup. Let's let him go race and test a 600 on the off weekends, which he's been doing. He's been riding a 600 a lot.
Oh, so he has a 600 he can ride, or track days, or
he's been club racing 600s and things.
Right.
So then he comes back, he rides a twin at MotoAmerica, but all the while, he's on a Suzuki GSX-R 600. So what that did, and his teammate Joe Blasius, I don't know what he's doing, but also Joe came from LuqiMoly. He's up in that class as his teammate. So now the paddock is going into 2020 thinking, okay, how many of these LuqiMoly kids are we going to have jump up to the twins class as well? And when you say garage grit, I love that, but there's also some really cool bikes that these guys have been building and putting together. I feel like Alex, when you look at him 20 points back, he's going to be the guy he's young. Technically, I don't know if there's anybody better on a bike that I've seen. I think Alex has really done well at 16. And we didn't see the second session again, as we said, but this morning he was quickest and he wasn't really happy. So the 20-point deficit that he's got to try to make up will be interesting to see how and if he can do that.
Now, last time we saw Alex out on the racetrack, he kind of checked out on the rest of the field. So when we're looking at this racetrack, what are you thinking for the twins for the race that we're going to have this weekend?
Well, this morning it was interesting because at one point Michael Barnes had a 3-second gap, and and you can't, again, it's that experience level. Now you're looking at a class that you have people coming from maybe Junior Cup up into this class that don't have that experience. You're looking at guys that maybe do a lot of club racing even from the area, but Laguna Seca never has club races. So a lot of these guys never get to ride here other than maybe some track days. The experienced guy, Michael Barnes, comes here. He's riding 10,000 laps around here, I'm sure, in his life. He comes in and he's quick right off the bat. I think Barney is going to be difficult. Drake Beecham's done a good job. He's won a race this year. He's another one of our LuqiMoly kids. But until you and I look at qualifying and see how things are going, it'll be interesting. But I think that you got those guys, Alex Dumas, Jason Madama was quick this morning, Chris Parrish, Chris Turner. There's again, in our class, we've got 6 or 7 guys that we can look at.
All right, we're going to wrap things up. Anything else you'd like to add, Jason Pridmore?
No, I mean, I think that the podcast has been a lot of fun for us to be able to talk about things and get information on these riders. It's cool getting Wayne to come in and sit with us today, and I can't think of a better place for us to do this for the first time. So thanks for your hard work, and I thank you every time. I don't know why I do that, but You bust your ass on this, so I appreciate that.
I don't know why you do that either. Although I do kind of like the fact that, I'm on the East Coast, you're on the West Coast. I don't really like looking at you during this podcast. This is kind of a weird thing.
My 8 o'clock is your 11 o'clock, which works better for you because you're sitting on the couch playing video games, shooting your bow.
How dare you?
Reminiscing about turn 3 at Laguna Seca.
All right, we got to.
You want to tell the story? You're at Laguna? No, you're okay.
Oh, turn 3 at Laguna?
No, I don't. I'm kidding.
Where's Roger Hayden?
No,
Does he listen to this podcast? I can tell the turn 3 story at Laguna anytime you're
Let's wrap it up.
All right, we're going to wrap it up. Really special thanks to MotoAmerica for allowing us to do this, and the entire crew here that brings you all this video, the TV truck and everybody. They're the ones who are doing the work to get this thing going. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks to all those guys for sure.
If you're in the area, come on down. It's MotoAmerica World Superbike weekend at WeatherTech Raceway, Laguna Seca. We want you to come check it out. The sun is shining. It's California. Race action is going to be unbelievable. We have all 5 classes here for MotoAmerica plus the World Superbike. It's going to be awesome. So for Jason and for Dallas and for JD and for Wayne, I'm Greg. Thanks for checking us out on the Greg's Garage Pod with co-host Jason Pridmore, as we do every week. We'll see you then.
Thanks, everybody.